Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fiume, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the founder of JETSET Pilates, Tamara Galinsky. Tamara, how are you today?
Hi, Frank. Super excited to be on your podcast, and thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's great to have you on, Tamara. So I'd love to hear the inspiration for JETSET and how you got started.
Yeah, it's a question that everybody likes to ask. JETSET is kind of the OJ of Pilates, because if you go back to 2010, when I started JETSET, people didn't even know what Pilates was, and I had to spend hours explaining it, explaining the reformer. But the story goes a little bit further than that, goes through my personal journey. I actually came to the United States when I was 15. I came from a former Soviet Union. I was 15. I didn't speak any English. I went through high school, was on food stamps, really poor, but then I got myself into an Ivy League university called University of Pennsylvania, and I studied economics. So my first journey, my career, I was not a Pilates instructor. I went into technology and then into commercial real estate. I became a partner. And it was not until I lived in London, where I gave birth to my very first daughter, that I gained a lot of weight. And I discovered a tiny Pilates studio in Kensington, which is centered London, in a basement with 4 reformers. I didn't know what Pilates was, but I said, at this point, I'm desperate. Wasn't feeling good. 60 pounds over. Mind-body connection was nowhere to be found. I got on the reformer, and it was like a lightning bulb. And within 6 months, I transformed my body. I quieted my mind, and I felt amazing. And then when you move it a few years in, when I moved to Miami, 2009, you would think Miami is like the fitness capital of the world.
Sure.
2009, I started looking for a Pilates studio the way I would like to do Pilates, and I wasn't able to find what I was looking for. And I kind of drove up and down from Miami to Palm Beach, tried it all, and I said, I'm just going to do my own studio and the way I like to work out. So I was never really thinking about it as a business. I was solving for myself.
Brilliant.
And I think I put a lot of thought into that, and I think it resonated with the initial client base. And I always say I'd rather have 100 fans than 1,000 customers. And even before the days of digital marketing, people got so hooked into their experience that they started telling their friends. And then I started looking at the mind-body zip codes, and I would see Palm Beach driving to Miami before the traffic. So that's when I knew I was onto something. But again, the creation of JETSET was not like today you would see a business. Well, let me do something and franchise it. What can I do? And let's just brainstorm. I came from a different direction.
Wow. And what possibly made you think like, okay, I'm going to go into business doing Pilates? Like you probably didn't even know what the marketplace was yet at that point in time.
Yeah. I mean, I knew there was nothing like that I wanted to create in Florida, in South Florida. I have musical education. I play piano, so I'm super musically driven. And I wanted to put the reformer into really aesthetic place, create curated playlists, make it a vibe, make it a community where people kind of get to know each other. And that's exactly what happened. You're right. I didn't know anything about Pilates, but I'm pretty business savvy, and I knew a lot about commercial real estate. So with the first location, there was my competitive advantage, because obviously you could, let go of an instructor, but you're not going to let go of your lease that you signed for 10 years. And I think that was also kind of one of the secret ingredients of my original success outside of, the actual studio experience, is choosing the right locations.
And how'd you come up with the name?
So the name is interesting. There were other names. I cannot even tell you what the other alternatives were. They're very embarrassing to mention them. To me, at that point, I was living London, New York, Miami, traveling a lot. And I have this whole core group of friends. And since the first studio was very small, it literally had 8 reformers. Our model today is minimum 12 to 18, 8, nothing. And today it's actually one of our training centers. I said, like, I'm coming up, I'm traveling, what's the name? And JETSET Pilates came to mind. People refer to it as JETSET. People who are on the go, busy professionals, like to stay active, and that's what's settled on my piece of paper, and that's what I filed with Department of Florida and the trademark.
Nice, nice. I'd love to kind of hear the beginning on what life was like. I know that you obviously hit something big and had the success, but I love hearing the tough days, and I think it
Yeah.
would be helpful for other emerging founders to hear what were some of the challenges that you faced when you were starting out and how you overcame it.
Well, when I started this business, at that point, I wasn't doing it actually for the money because I was financially independent. I was married to somebody who was doing great. I did it for myself, but obviously with profitability in mind. And the interesting thing is when I opened 2, 3, and 4, I didn't have debt. I was rolling my profits into the next second, third, and fourth studio. But one of the most challenging things at the beginning for me was 2 weeks after I opened the studio, and I was the manager and the instructor and everything, I got pregnant with my number 2. So here I was running a business, a 4-year-old at home, teaching classes all the way through 7 months pregnant. So I was teaching Pilates classes, and JETSET separates itself from traditional reformer methods, were a lot more challenging. And I pulled it through because it was really, sink or swim. And the nice part of it is when I gave birth and people said, like, wow, look at you. Did you just really give birth? It was because I was so active in teaching the classes and getting on the reformer, and it really helped me with my second delivery. But that was at the beginning, very beginning. There were a lot of other challenging moments, but this was literally 2 weeks as I opened my doors. I'm like, you've
Wow.
got to be kidding me.
How long was it before you opened your second and third location?
So the first one was end of 2010, close to 11. The second was 2013. And then a year later, I opened the third and fourth. And we started franchising when I had 4 corporate locations.
Smart. And that is something not enough people do, I think. And I speak, I speak from example too of what I did. And most people don't open enough locations to get a handle for the really having systems and processes and making sure they can replicate the success.
Yeah.
And also in different markets or similar markets. Did you pick similar or different markets of each one of the Pilates studios?
So I don't know how much you know about Miami and what's been happening in Miami, but Miami became the center of culture, music, tourism
Uh-huh.
in the last 5 to 6 years. And I had a vision that I want to create a powerful brand. Okay. I knew the unit economics were there for franchising, but I wanted to create a brand. And I think that's kind of a lot of times missing ingredients for people who are trying to franchise. They have to create a brand in the community. And I think by doing it in Miami in a close enough cluster that I could reach, that people care about when they come to Miami from Dallas, from London, from Austin, they were coming to JETSET. So when we actually pulled the trigger after we've created the systems, and we said we're franchising, there's so many people that have been to Miami because it's a people place, like to activate or visit, right? And a lot of brands today activate in Miami. I just had this vision. I'm not going to take all this maybe profit. I would rather sell it to a franchisee and open in Tampa or Boca, because not a lot of people are going to care about Boca, but Miami, the greater Miami, is where I really created kind of like the presence and the buzz, and New York, Miami. And I think all of that really helped launch JETSET nationally as a franchise concept.
Absolutely. That's a great lesson actually for other founders to learn with their brand, because most of the time, like I said, they start out with one unit or they'll open up units that are so far apart that they really can't gain that momentum. And I think that's obviously one of the things that you did that was
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant. But if you can go back from when you first started, what's maybe one thing that you would have done differently?
One thing that I would have done differently, I guess I could have started franchising sooner.
Okay.
I didn't have to wait that long. Um, but the idea came to me in 2018, and I was at an entrepreneurs organization called EO. It's kind of the predecessor to YPO.
Yep.
And I was sitting at a forum, and they said, well, how do you want to grow JETSET? And I was like, I don't know. I don't want to take on more leases. What do I do? And one of the forum members like, do you know anything about franchising? And I said, no. And because it's a big organization, they said, well, go hear this talk by this guy who franchised Claire's.
Okay.
Claire's, the trinkets,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I went to hear, I heard him. I got a book called How to Franchise Your Business written by Mark Seabird.
Yep.
I linked up on him on LinkedIn, called. I said, my name is Tamara. No, nothing about franchising. This is my brand. Would you mind spending 10 minutes talking to me? And he was kind enough, like, sure. So I started to really do my research, but then 2020 pandemic happened. That's when I signed one of the leases, actually 2 weeks before we shut down. And so there's a little bit of a setback, but I think, you know, in a way, I regret that I didn't franchise sooner, but in a way, I think God has a plan, because during the pandemic, Pilates really blew up, and we were perfectly set to be that brand, to be the first into the modern Pilates world, because so many people didn't want to be next to each other sweating, and they wanted to be in a reformer. That combined with TikTok, social media, it kind of blew up, and we rode the wave. The timing was perfect.
Yeah, I think the timing was, as it turns out, perfect. I'm not sure how much, sooner it could have all happened,
Right.
considering all things. And
But I was
not,
frustrated. I was like, why it's not coming together? How do I do it? Do I hire the people? I'd speak to one, it will fall through. And then everything just came together in 2022. The team came together,
Mhm.
was formed, the franchising entity was created, and with a really, really smart people with a lot of experience in franchising and fitness.
All right.
So that's where I feel the gap. I think for a founder, it's really important to know where to fill the gaps of knowledge, because most founders are creators, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's one of the challenges that we have. And I notice with other founders is trying to get out of your own way and making sure you're building a team. So with that said, I want to kind of give the
Yeah.
audience a little lay of the land here. You've got 23 locations that are franchise owned right now, right? And plus you have 4 company owned. You guys are in 7 states. Before we get into how many in development, because I think the numbers are going to blow people away that
Yeah.
are locations that are not open yet, I'd like to hear though about when you first franchised, and I assume you used Mark's organization, the iFranchise Group, to franchise?
Actually, no, we've set it up internally. We have a whole corporate team. We now have 26 people working full time for JETSET Franchising. It started with a core team. Mark was definitely the initial,
They
person
helped.
for me to talk to and get
Okay.
advice on. But immediately we've set up an entity, and I was a big part of it. And then we started to bring people in.
So what did your corporate team look like? How many people did you have before you franchised? Because you guys have taken off like a rocket.
Yeah. So when it was just corporate studios, it was pretty much me
Uh-huh.
and a skeleton staff of people just like your typical Pilates studio operating model. The owner, GM, studio lead, instructors, very narrow. When we started to franchise, we right away have a CEO of JETSET Franchising that comes from experience in franchising, chief operating officer. Uh, we have now head of franchise services that has a team under her. We have head of real estate. We have director, VP of operations. We have head of marketing with field marketing people. So we have head of merchandising. So it's a really proper, fully scale organization to get us to 600 to 800 locations that we're going to at this point.
You guys are well on your way. So you have, is it 125 in development right now?
So we have 125 in development. Out of those, we have 30 in active site selection. Okay. So that means they're about to sign their leases. And 35 more are now identifying their site selection areas, because when you award licenses, sometimes, we've awarded 19 and 9, but they're not going to be 11. We're actually making an announcement about 12 licenses we just awarded in Pennsylvania. So it's, we're getting savvy and savvier partners, but our network has been pretty strong and our AUV has been really strong. We've been happy with everything so far. But obviously, as you grow, there are going to be some growing pains. We just
Of
hope to
course.
avoid them.
Right.
And we're moving quickly, but responsibly, I think.
Well, that's the most important part. Now, I know there's plenty of emerging founders that are watching this podcast and are going to say, Tamara, how did you do that? Because you opened your first franchise in 2023. And that's just an incredible growth. So what's been the secret?
I think our secret ingredient is the product is freaking amazing. I really think so. I mean, you go into JETSET and it feels so good to be there. The workout feels amazing. The music is superb. We actually have a DJ on retainer that curates all of our music the way I've envisioned it when I built a brand. Uh, the studios are extremely aesthetic, but with the future in mind. They're not created like, let me follow this company because I saw it on Instagram. We've created something super unique, super modern. The aesthetic of it is very cool. And the community is superb. And I think what we've done very differently that no other brand has been able to replicate thus far, we've created what's called JETSET on the mat. It's taking JETSET outside of the four walls. So before we even launch a studio, we create these mat events in the community. People come with mats and we teach them JETSET classes on the reformer, on the mat with our music. Vendors come in and we've seen like hundreds of people show up trying to get in. And actually big companies, national companies are now approaching us to collaborate with them on their activations. Like one of them is Unwell. Huge company. They came to us and we're doing like an Unwell tour. So I think JETSET is really like the brand that has become experiential and taking JETSET in the reformer outside the four walls. And people see it. It's a lot of it floating around on social media. Like, what is this? Where is this class? You know, Lake Norman, or why they're in the mat, or there's a studio. So people enjoy it. People want to be out of their Zooms and offices and corporate worlds. And yes, the ROI, but it's also the community aspect. And JETSET truly hits the mark.
Wow. And how did you find your first dozen or so franchisees?
Uh, all organic. We did not work with franchise brokers when we launched. It was literally, hey, our 20,000 clients that have been to JETSET since 2010, we're franchising, and immediately like hand raise. Shocking. So the first few were clients and they've done amazing. Actually, the first many, but now that we are really going and scaling quickly, we've partnered with an FSO called Limitless
Okay.
Franchise Growth. They were the engine behind Club Pilates growth, not the expo, but just that Club Pilates brand. They were the internal franchise development team because we were thinking, do we grow the franchise development arm internally? But the demand was so high, we couldn't keep up. So we decided to give it a try. And I think that's where the scaling now is coming from at this point, now that we're over 125 to get us to 600 to 800 between US and international.
Wow, that's incredible. But you're giving a great example of why people should open a few more corporate owned locations so they can get the momentum, and because inevitably their first franchisees are probably going to be customers. And so that really kind of fuels the fire. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't, you know, I would not want to open 40, 50 corporate locations.
Absolutely.
Obviously, that's a whole
Absolutely.
different model, but you need to have enough to have an R&D, right? One is just not enough to give you R&D. You have to go a little bit out, maybe a little bit bigger studios, try different things. And I think you're right. Your initial ones are going to be customers, but they're going to be more fans than customers. Like
Yeah.
the fan base of JETSET is who became the franchisee. And one of it was as simple as me walking into the Brickell studio before franchising. And I was talking to the manager. I'm like, I have to go into a franchise meeting. And a customer comes out. What do you mean? You franchising? I didn't get the memo. I want to be a franchisee. And sure enough, they're one of our, top tiered franchisees today in here in Coral Gables. So a lot of stories like that, just early days. Now it's really, really organized. We spend a lot of money on digital marketing for franchise development. We work with all the brokers, franchise. I mean, when in every single network, obviously.
But one of the things you evidently did right in the beginning when you franchised was bringing on the right franchisees, because you got such incredible momentum. And
Yeah.
unless you had really, really strong franchisees, you wouldn't have continued growing. So tell us a little bit about your franchisee selection.
Yeah.
Who's a strong franchise owner, and what are some of those attributes?
Well, it's interesting you asked me that because I just got off a board call where we were recalibrating our typical franchise avatar, right? Because
Okay.
as the brand grows, that changes because you become more sophisticated. People are buying more units.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, we have kind of 6 avatars, but for our top, we have the power couple because we really have seen great success with like a money guy, investment banker, finance, and a wife who is just fitness crazy, great in the community,
Mm-hmm.
great managing staff, and they go in as a couple that work really well, really well for us. We have people who are trying to exit the corporate world, but they're not exiting their careers. They're staying in the corporate world, and they know they're in the corporate world more on the front end and then the back end. They know how to manage teams and build teams, and they would be hiring, the GM and kind of creating a legacy for themselves post, um, corporate America. We've seen partners coming in, 2 people coming in and partnering. Usually they complement each other. We've seen a lot of success with that. It's kind of interesting because you think partnerships are tricky, but if they work out their operating agreements, they're
Mm-hmm.
pretty good. And then people who have been clients, um, they've been really successful with JETSET because they already know the brand. They drink the Kool-Aid, they've experienced it, and they just want to bring it into their hometowns. But they're usually professionals, young professionals.
Okay. And what about the split between single unit owners versus now multi-unit operators?
Great question. So on an average, even though in our network today we have people who own 19 or 9 units, on an average, we have 2.5 per person. That's just how it splits,
Hmm.
right? But it means it's a combination of the larger ones, 1 and 3 units. I think majority of people are 3-unit packages, though we really like to sell 1 to sometimes develop certain areas quicker.
Tamara, what's the investment range to open a location?
So the investment range is anywhere between 480 to about 850. And the reason it changes is because it all depends on real estate, right? And depends on TI. So that's the biggest differentiator in different
Mm-hmm.
markets, how much money you're going to get from the landlord towards you build out. And, that's the range of our studios so far we've seen in 2025
Okay. And
FDT.
how big is a territory, or how far apart do you try to keep the studios from one another?
So we try to keep them, well, we're looking at our target demographic, about 30,000 people who fit the criteria of young professionals, certain income level. In Miami, it could be 2 miles. In Manhattan, it could be blocks, right?
Sure.
So we're looking at really the demographic, psychographic than just like miles per se. And, because we're still pretty young, I mean, yes, we're kind of sold out in South Florida, but there's still areas that we're pretty aggressively developing. Some states you go dark, like California, right now in New York, Virginia, but that's the story with every franchise organization.
Right, right. And with this incredible momentum that you've had, what's been the biggest surprise for you in terms of franchising your concept?
Um, I'm just shocked that when we go to these markets, like, let me explain. One of them is Lake Norman. I mean, I've never been to Lake Norman.
Mm-hmm.
Miami, Lake Norman, there's now connectivity, and they blew it out of the ranks with their pre-sales, and people love it so much that just goes back to when you're a founder of a company and you may have a board and you may have investors and you may have a lot of people, stick true to what you've created. Okay, because people don't know what they like until they try it. And you don't need to change to the market. You don't need to subdue your workout or the intensity or the music or the build out because you're going in some of these other markets that may not be per se like Miami. But it's just, Miami school, JETSET a school. So
Uh-huh.
I think that's been my surprise. The response, it's been really, really positive. And the second surprise, and it's a surprise to everybody for like still emerging franchise, we have so many existing franchisees coming back to us asking to buy more units.
That is the best part. That is
Yeah.
that's a great compliment.
Yeah.
And well, have you thought about growing this thing out over the next 5 to 10 years, what's JETSET going to look like?
Well, for me personally, merchandising of JETSET, the merch that we carry in the studios is a huge opportunity. And we actually creating a whole team that is going to be now working on really scaling it up. Because if you look at our avatar clients, they're pretty incredible. They come into the studios, they're ready to spend, they want new things. And one of my favorite brands is actually Viore. And we have most prime real estate, great design. I'm like, yeah, we want to do that. So I feel like in 5 to 10 years, I think JETSET is going to have two legs. We're definitely going to be a fitness brand, but I think we're also going to be a go-to brand to buy some cool merchandise, some apparel. And that's something that not a single franchise has been able to get. And I've spoken to a lot of PE firms and owners. That's a challenging thing because everybody's so focused on unit economics and the experience that kind of the retail is in the back burner. And I think now we're really trying to focus on that.
Well, that is, if you could pull this off, I mean, that is going to strengthen the brand so much. They're connecting all of a sudden the connection of JETSET Pilates, JETSET Fitness, JETSET Health. I mean, that's the magic in what you're trying to create.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really my hope.
Mhm.
And then going abroad, I think Europe is really catching up on the trend, especially London, Milan. We open in Australia, but our focus is still in the States. But we are going to, we're already in conversations for international expansion.
Wow. Tamara, this has just been incredible growth, and it would be scary to a lot of other founders. How big is your leadership team right now? What do you guys look like?
So we're 26 people, full time,
Uh-huh.
um, in corporate. They're not all in Miami. Some of them are in Virginia, in New York City. But our training academy is here. But all the groups are there today to actually, we're ready to service 300 franchise locations. We already scaled up to that because our view was we're not opening and then figuring it out. Who do we need? We right now have like in our support and services, it's one person for 25 as far as support and services for 25 locations, just in that little department where the average franchise is 1 to 50. The ratio is
Okay.
much bigger and ours is much smaller. We really, really want them to succeed. And I think we want to be that brand that's kind of like stays pristine. At least that's my hope.
Uh-huh.
And you don't hear us getting in trouble because we're really trying to be very methodical from how we choose people, how we support them, and the whole pre-opening and post-opening process.
Yeah. Well, yeah, things will fall apart very quickly, especially if you have this accelerated growth of
Yeah.
trying to open locations.
But if you think 26 people full-time and 23 locations open, that's a pretty high ratio.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Who do you suggest, or who did you hire as your first like C-level person?
3 people, CEO, chief operating officer,
Okay.
chief strategy officer. I said CEO, chief operating officer, and chief strategy, 3 people.
Wow.
We all came together as a team, as the initial operating team, and we all had our core competencies. And that's kind of what launched their initial FDD, the operating standards manual. And that's when we started the sales process.
And what about trends in the industry? Obviously, Pilates is caught on, it's not new, but are you seeing something that maybe is evolving in your industry as a trend from when you first started in 2010 to today? And what does the
Yeah,
customer want that's maybe different?
absolutely. I think the trend is going back into, boutique fitness. I think people want to be in a luxurious experience, but also I want to say at affordable prices.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's where JETSET is. We're luxury Pilates at affordable prices because I know there's a trend. Some studios charge crazy money, some VIP lists. Like to me, that's not the way to scale personally. We want to go out to as many people in a community as we can, but we have our perfect demographic. And what I think the trend we've seen at JETSET, and I can't speak for every business or gym, where people as young as 13, they fill up half the class. Their parents are happy because they're not sitting there on their phones. Pilates is safe. You're not jumping, you're not hitting, you're not dropping heavy weights.
Mhm.
It's very small groups, 12 to 14 people. So we've seen the trend with the younger generation really starting early. Wish I had that. I mean, my 13-year-old daughter goes with her friends all the time, which is incredible. But as far as Pilates industry, I think obviously there's going to be a lot of Pilates studios trying to enter the market. But it's all, to me, it's about brand building and connecting to the customer. Just like there's a lot of people who build shoes, clothing, perfumes, makeup. I mean, there's dime a dozen that are coming into the market even today, and they're doing incredible. I think it's about the brand, and we're very protective of it. And I think JetSet has just done a great job branding and connecting to the community.
Sure. How big is a typical studio?
So the typical studio is, when you have 12 reformers, the floor plate is about 1,500 square feet. If you
Mhm.
go out to 1,800 reformers, it's about 2,400 square feet. So that's our
That's
typical.
yeah, that's a pretty good size. I mean, it's
Yeah.
pretty well managed. And where do you like to have these studios primarily?
Yeah, so that's a good question. If we're coming into the market, like we're coming into Dallas right now, the first location just has to be the wow. We
Mhm.
want that great retail spot. But second, third, and if you're in a city center like Lake Norman, when there's very tight real estate, you still want to be with like-minded co-tenants. But
Mhm.
we're fine if they go on the second floor as long as there's visibility and great plazas. The trend I'm also seeing in the market and the challenges of real estate, because there's so many Club Pilates, they have taken exclusivity on so many centers. But thankfully, there are new centers being developed. Landlords now know JetSet. They're actually reaching out to us because we bring the right foot traffic. So that's been pretty incredible.
Wow. Well, Tamara, I mean, you're talking what, 700 locations that you have your eyes set, on already. What kind of legacy do you hope to lead
Yeah.
and leave with Jet Set?
Brands evolve. Who knows what else going to get attached and what other verticals could spin off from JetSet. There's a lot of
Okay.
potential. We're definitely a technology-driven company. I think the legacy, we want to improve the way franchising operations work within our organization, because I feel like it's very inefficient to be logging into 7 or 8 different vendors when you're trying to manage your operation. So that's one part. But for me, legacy, look, I came, when I was here, I was 15 and broke. So it's about giving back. I actually was listening to somebody talk about, giving a story about why we do things. And it's the person who does things for themselves and only for the financial gain never wins.
Never.
And so for me, I see so many people in the community in Miami whose kids now work for JetSet. My daughter's friend is training to be an instructor. My daughter works as a studio lead. My 13-year-old, sadly, she was a little bit bullied in school, gained weight, went to JetSet, started doing Pilates, is in incredible shape at 13. It's like a great place to go to. So I think it's just, that's the legacy I hope to leave. And, outside of just being the founder of a successful brand, I think how it touches the lives of franchise owners and their clients.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. And the ripple effect you're going to have on people, even way beyond clients, franchisees, and the employees of franchisees. This is going to be incredible to watch. I know you guys are going to definitely be a brand to look out for in the go
I hope
forward.
so.
Yeah. Yeah. What if someone was interested in opening a Jet Set Pilates, where would they go?
They just go to the website and there's franchising tab and they fill out the application and they hear back from our team within 24 hours and they get to meet me at the confirmation day.
Sweet. All right, Tamara, I got one last question for
Sure.
you. I end every podcast with the franchise tip jar because the franchise community is so generous with sharing of advice and information. And you've had this incredible success in a really short period of time. So I'd love for you to talk with an emerging founder that's out there that's stuck. What's a piece of advice that you'd give them if they're stuck at like 5, 6, 7 locations?
Um, Being stuck, that means you just don't have the tools, right, to get unstuck. And I would really highly recommend they partner, they hire the people that know how to get them unstuck, because founders cannot do it all. And I think those that are sitting there and thinking they can sit in their performers and do analysis and train and support, I think that's why they get stuck. I think it's okay to get diluted a little bit to bring in the right partners, because I would rather take 1% of a billion than 100% of a million.
Tamara, that's great advice. I could not agree with you more. I think when you have a bootstrap founder, I bootstrapped my company, and I know many others that have, and they'll always say, well, I can't afford to hire this person. And I think you and I both agree, you can't afford not to
Not
hire
to.
this person, because you're not bringing somebody on as an expense. You bring somebody on to help you grow
Right.
and build a company. They're not a cost. They are part of the engine that's going to really make the company grow. And I always believe you got one shot at this, right?
Yeah.
We don't have endless opportunity of success when we start a brand.
Yeah. And also another thing is age doesn't matter. I think what I realize is that we get wiser with experience. It's okay to start at 50, at 60, your first franchise concept. You probably would gain a few things that you didn't know when you were younger. You might have less energy, but that's why you partner with people who have a little bit more energy.
Heck yeah. I would have been a whole lot better starting out today than I would have been 25 years ago, for sure.
That's it.
Well, Tamara, thank you so much for being on the show. I
Cool.
appreciate it. I wish you
course.
all the continued success with
Thanks so
JETSET.
much.
And we'll be keeping our eyes on you guys.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.